Hello everyone. So last video of the series, and probably the one that we're trying to get to in terms of just being able to just take an ECG and read it. So that is the purpose of this last one, is I'm just going to do about probably about 5 ECGs and just work through them using that approach. And then after that, I mean, it's really just practice. So let's share the PowerPoint. Yeah, so I just called it practice with 12 leads. Just for fun, I included this in here. The U of A in 2010, the med students made a video about heart rhythms, specifically Wanky back, and that's the link. So it's kind of fun. So basically at this point, you're just going to be using the full cheat sheet, and you're just putting it all together with a 12 lead ECG practice. And then the rare steak barbecue of Sterling. So I'll just pull that over here. So if you guys have been following along, then you'd know that the rare steak barbecue just stands for rate, axis, rhythm, which is depending on the P and QRS relationship with the PR interval. Intervals, so rare, so it has RA and IR, just in some kind of order here. Steak, which stands for hypertrophy of the atrium or ventricles. Barbecue, bundle branch blocks, and then Q waves, ST segments for Sterling ST, and then of course there's the T waves in there, and then R wave progression, and then you can check for other things after that. And then this is just the little table, so reading Q, ST, T, and R waves, looking through the lateral, inferior, and anterior leads, so 1 AVF, V5, V6, 2, 3 AVF, precordial V1 through 4, and then the interpretation at the bottom, quite important, and then checking V1 through 6, R wave should be getting larger. Coronary artery anatomy, so the right coronary artery over here, V1 through 4 in the front. Posterior descending 2, 3 and AVF, but you can also do a V8 and 9 if it's posterior, and the mirror image of V1 and V2 can show that. And V5 and V6 can sometimes show the circumflex if it's supplying the posterior descending artery. And then the left circumflex artery, which is 1 at AVL and V5 and 6. And then going through the cheat sheet, so rate, axis, intervals, rhythm, hypertrophy, bundle branch blocks, and the QSTR. And additional diagnostic criteria, Wolff AV blocks, Wolff Parkinson White, strain, ischemia, infarction, pericarditis, and pulmonary embolism, which probably won't show up, but it's there. And then you have the rest of the sheet. You can look through it on your own time, but that's the sheet. I'm just going to have it open on my other screen, so that way I can look at it if I need it. All right, so we're going to go into teachingmedicine.com. And I'm going to make sure that I'm sharing the correct screen. So just share screen again. All right, so if you just go into teaching medicine, and if you guys have this year, hopefully you do, you go into skill modules, and then you click on ECG, and then you have all these tutorials. At the very bottom, it says practice basic 12 lead ECG. So if you click on that, it'll take you to this page right here. And so I've already gone through it all once before, but I'm going to start from the beginning. So practice again. So if you look at this, it's a really amazing resource. It gives you just random ECGs, and it's really going to test how well can you read ECG. And then all your options here, so rhythm, conduction abnormalities, axes, chamber enlargements, ischemia, infarction, diagnoses. So basically we're going to work through it, and then we'll click on those boxes and see how we did. And then there's descriptions at the end of each one, so that way you can see if you didn't get it right, why was that the case? Or if you did get it right, why was that the case? So let's start with rate. So 300, so it's over 150. And it's generally a 10-second ECG, so it's not really a concern. This looks like it's mostly down going here. And if you look at AVL, that's down. This is up, so it looks like this is a right axis. So for rhythm, looks like we have some retrograde P waves in here. There's one there. Looks like there might be one there. Looks like one there. Okay, so I'm thinking AVRT or NRT. Intervals, oh, the PR is completely abnormal if those P waves are retrograde, so there's no PR. QRS looks nice and looks pretty tight. That's pretty narrow. 1, 2, not quite as tight, but it doesn't look wide. So I'm going to say normal PR or normal QRS. And QT, it's tachycardia. So I'd still say normal QT. It's long, but it's tachycardia. Hypertrophy. I don't think there's hypertrophy here. So no atrial hypertrophies. And ventricular. Up, up, up. Maybe this is a right ventricular hypertrophy because it's going up here. Could be. It looks like a right ventricular hypertrophy. The only problem is the V6 doesn't have that sign. So I'm still thinking right ventricular hypertrophy because the axis shifts though. So I'm going to go with right ventricular hypertrophy. And now we're going to go on to bundle branch blocks, probably none because it's not a wide QRS. And then let's check our Qs, STs. Ts are in lateral, inferior, and anterior leads, and then the interpretation. Okay, lateral. No Q, no Q, no Qs. ST segment. Depressed, depressed, depressed. T's up, 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 up. R wave doesn't matter here. Inferior. Q's absent. ST segment. Depressed, depressed, depressed. This could be an inverted T. ST depression for sure though. Anterior leads. So it's about even. There's no Q, no Q, no Q, no Qs. ST segment. It's about level. Depressed, depressed, depressed. T waves, inverted, upright, upright, upright. First two waves inverted. So lots of ST depression. And the R wave progression. Well, it's present, but it's kind of abnormal. So the interpretation would be, it'd be anterior lateral. Well, it'd be diffuse ST depression because it's all three. So it'd just be like a diffuse ischemia, probably from the tachycardia. So rhythm, probably not a sinus, probably supraventricular tachycardia, AVRT or AVNRT. No conduction abnormalities, right axis deviation, right ventricular hypertrophy. Signs of ischemia, but no STEMIs. And I don't think any of these would apply. No pericarditis, no really repolarization or any of those. All right, so rhythm. Oh, awesome. So that doesn't always happen. So we got supraventricular, no conduction abnormalities, axis is right ventricular hypertrophy. It looks like they coded it neutral, so it's debatable. Signs of ischemia are present, and there's none of the above. So number 5. Yeah, so right axis deviation with an R greater than S greater than 1 suggests the right ventricular hypertrophy. However, with supraventricular tachycardia, should be careful about making this diagnosis and should repeat the ECG when the patient is in sinus rhythm for greater accuracy. Okay, so I'd say it's correct for here. All right, number 2. Starting with rate, 301, 150. Axis. Looks like normal axis. Checking in 1 in AVF. Rhythm. So I see a narrow QRS. I'm looking for P waves. Here's a P wave. There's a P wave. There's a P wave. There's a P wave. Oof. So now I'm deciding, is this a long P wave or is this a retrograde P wave? Well, retrograde is usually inverted. So I think this is the AV1 block, which would usually be bradycardia. And our rate is 150. Yeah, I think it still is an AV1 block. So it'd be a sinus tachycardia with an AV1 block. Either that, or I just totally got that wrong. It'd be supraventricular tachycardia then. We'll see. Rate axis rhythm. Intervals, PR is long, very long. So that long PR is why I think AV block 1. QRS is normal. QT, normal. It's less than half. Checking for hypertrophy. Don't see it there. No, not enough. No, so no hypertrophies. Check over here. No, no hypertrophy. And there's no bundle branch blocks. The QRS isn't wide. So checking our Q, S, T, T, and R. Lateral, inferior, anterior, and the interpretation. Lateral, no Qs. ST segment is a little bit depressed in V5 and V6. I guess lead 1 perhaps, but not AVL. So depressed in V5 and 6. T waves, up, 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 up. Normal T's, R doesn't matter. Inferior. Q's absent. ST segment, depressed, depressed, depressed. T waves, normal, normal, normal. Anterior leads. Anterior leads. No Q, no Q, no Q, no Q. ST segment, depressed, 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 depressed. So this is diffuse depression again. T waves are normal. R's, I'd say normal. Interpretation, diffuse ST depression. Okay, so it looks like we have, so this is either a supraventricular tachycardia, and this is just a really weird looking T wave. And based on the rate, $25 on 6, 150. So the rate's 150, so that sounds like a sinus tachycardia, because supraventricular is usually like really high, like over 150, like 200 kind of idea. So I think it's a first degree block. The axis is normal. There's no hypertrophies. Signs of ischemia are present, and none of the above. So let's see if I got that right. All right, so misread that. So it's supraventricular tachycardia, but the rest is correct. So let's double check. So those must have been weird looking T's. Well, so there's a P wave after each. Okay, so obviously supraventricular tachycardia is a better answer. It could be what I had for the first degree block is probably less likely because that would be a bradycardia. All right, let's do the next case. Number 3. Oh, this is AFib or A-flutter, sawtooth waves. Rhythm 300, 150, 175, 75. So it's not attack. Well, it's flutter. Axis is, oh, it looks a little bit, yeah, it's right axis. I mean, I can just add it in here, make this faster. Rhythm, atrial flutter, intervals, the PR is gone, QRS is normal. So normal QRS. And then the QT is probably normal. Judging on, this is probably a T, and that's less than half. Hypertrophy. It's going to be challenging to see hypertrophy in here. Could be right atrial enlargement, especially with this kind of double peak. And how big these P waves are, they're huge. Cover almost entire box. So I think it might be a right atrial enlargement. And then probably none of the rest. Probably not ventricular or right ventricular hypertrophy. That's not wide enough to be a right bundle branch block. So QRS is still normal. All right, so right axis with right atrial enlargement does make sense. Or it's the start of a bundle branch problem. Okay, so hypertrophy blocks. All right, let's check our Q waves, STs, Ts, R, and lat. And lateral, inferior, and interior. Lateral. No Q. Goes R first, so that's not a Q. No Q, no Q. ST segments, probably normal. Maybe a little bit depressed there. Looks almost a little bit elevated there. So it looks normal. So kind of have conflicting, so I'm just going to leave it out for now. T waves. Looks like the P waves invert. Oh, no, it's just a P. Probably there. Yeah, I'd say normal. R wave progresses. So there's still a big S wave there, though. So this might be right ventricular hypertrophy, actually. Because we have an S wave here and R wave there. So let's actually switch to right ventricular. And then we could keep the right atrial enlargement too, because this is a really big P wave with a double hump. So probably a 2 for 1 here, or 2 in 1. Inferior leads, no Qs. It's not very noticeable. ST segment. Hard to say. think normal, but I can't tell for sure based on this. T is normal. Anterior leads. There's some ST elevation, but so subtle. This one is barely elevated, if at all. Probably not very much. This one is elevated, but only by a box. And it's not obvious in lead 5, so I'm not going to put it in there. And the T wave is upright, so the T's are normal. The R is wonky, so I'm thinking right ventricular hypertrophy. Since we have a R wave and an S wave. I wouldn't say ischemia. I don't think there's a STEMI. And then none of the above for, so rhythm, atrial flutter, none, right, let's have a look. Okay, so no right atrial enlargements, that wasn't right atrial, but the rest is right. So have a look. Oh, you can't diagnose atrial enlargement with atrial flutter. Oh, okay, so couldn't diagnose that. That looks uncomfortable to sit on, but you can't diagnose it in any flat. So good to know. We're on to number 4. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 10, 60. Axis upright. Rhythm looks like a wavy baseline, so looks like AFib. There's no PR interval. QRS 1, a bit 1. Looks like a narrow QRS. I'd say it's still a narrow QRS though. So normal QRS. And the T is, QT is normal. Hypertrophy, can't see an AFib. Left ventricular, probably not. Right ventricular. No, I wouldn't say it's right ventricular. So no hypertrophy. Hypertrophy. So let's check the Q waves. And for bundle branch blocks, it just doesn't look very likely. So this doesn't look wide enough. Looks like 2 squares, 1 square, maybe 2 squares. So it's not really wide enough for bundle branch block. So checking out Q, S, T, T, and R. Lateral, inferior, anterior, and the interp. No Qs. ST. ST elevation in V5 and V6. T's normal. Okay, inferior Q, 1 there, not there, so it's not reciprocate. There's not 2, so it's not a Q to look at, to be concerned about. It's fine. ST elevation in all 3. T's are normal. Anterior. ST looks normal, ST elevation, 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 but man, these are really high. So it's elevated. There's no Q. The T is upright, but it's concave and spiked. So this looks like pericarditis. do my interpretation. Rate, atrial fibrillation. There's no blocks. Where would it be junctional escape? Might be, yeah, with junctional escape because it has to get through. Axis was normal, I think. I didn't see any hypertrophies. I wouldn't say those. I would say it's pericarditis. Let's have a look. Okay, so they didn't want junctional escape. And early repolarization, interesting. So let's have a look at that. All right, question 2. They didn't talk about the junctional escape. I guess some of the P waves kind of get through, or the flutter gets through and sends off. Would have thought it'd be kind of a junctional escape, but I guess not. And all right, here we go. There's upsloping concave upwards ST elevations in most leads except AVR. And there's notching of the J point in leads 2. Oh, there's a notch. B2 and B3. Yeah, you can see the notch right there, right there. Strongly suggested for early repolarization. It's not diagnostic for ischemic infarction because it's seen in almost every lead. So because of that, it's almost a really probably early repolarization or pericarditis. So the notch J wave differentiates pericarditis from early repolarization. Probably kind of advanced level here, but the other stuff, the junctional escape, I guess, you just wouldn't say it's there just because I guess it's still normal. All right, so number 5. Okay, this is very wide, so let's try to do R to R. Just find one. So 300, 150, greater than 100. Axis. So now we have to make sure we get the right axis here. So we can find a lead that is very sure of what the QRS is. We're going to take that. So there's a Q, QRS, 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 QRS. So this QRS is down going, so it's negative in lead 1. This was a QRS. And this QRS is down going, so it's negative in lead AVF, so it's a negative, so it's an extreme axis. Wait, rhythm. Oh, rhythm. This would be ventricular tachycardia with the really wide QRSs. So VTach. Right, rhythm axis, intervals. Intervals, well, there's no PR. The QRS is wide. The PR is probably in there somewhere, but hard to see. So the biggest thing is the wide QRS. Hypertrophy, you're not going to be able to find. And then everything else after that, you're probably not going to be able to do. So ventricular tachycardia, none of the above for those. Extreme axis, can't see that. Probably can't see that. I'm not going to bother with those. Let's have a look. Left axis. All right, everything else is correct. Let's double check the left axis. Three. Upgoing in 1. I guess that is the QRS. And downgoing in 2. So the left axis. Oh, I see it. AVF was definitely downgoing, and this is actually upgoing. So that's the QRS. So I got that wrong. So that's up, and then that's down, so it's left. All right, so we'll make this our last one here. All right, so rate 75, axis up, normal. Rhythm looks like there's a P wave before a QRS. It doesn't look really close or really far. Sinus rhythm. Conduction abnormalities. Just going to kind of make this one quick. Nope. Don't see the first degree blocks along PR. And there's no bundle branch blocks because that's not wide. Atrial enlargement. Maybe left atrial enlargement. Doesn't look very big though, so I'm going to say it's not there for now. Left ventricular. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, it's not there. That's not the right ventricular, so no hypertrophies. Ischemia, so looking for Qs. Don't see the Qs, looking for STs. Pretty level. This one's a little bit elevated. That one's elevated. So lateral ST elevation. Inferior Qs. Doesn't look it. It looks like RSR. RSR. No Q. But there's PR depression. Just based on it, looks like it goes down right before it gets to the QRS. So that sounds a lot like pericarditis. And the ST is elevated. And the T wave's up. So let's have a look here. ST down, up, 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 up. Now looks like the T waves are up. No Qs. So it looks like pericarditis. Going to check for that early repolarization now, that notch in the J wave. Don't see it. Could be there. Might be there. Could be there. So it could be that early repolarization again. But with the PR depression, I think I'm going to stick with the pericarditis. And if I get it wrong, that's okay. Let's have a look. Oh, nice. Got it. So normal sinus rhythm. So we'll finish on a high note. No conduction abnormalities, normal axis, no hypertrophy that isn't big enough to be a left atrial enlargement. There is no ischemia or infarcts because there's no Qs. The STs were elevated almost everywhere, and the Ts are up. So none of the above, and pericarditis, the PR depression. So if you look at that, there's also ST segment elevation, depression in AVR, notching the J point, and leads 1 at B6. So that's 1 and B6 over there. The PR segment depression plus notching the J point makes pericarditis. Yeah, so without the PR depression, it's less likely. It'd be more like an early repolarization. Yeah, so the PR depression is how we tell. Alrighty, so save and quit. And really, there's nothing else in the PowerPoint. I hope that this series was helpful. If you have any questions, I mean, feel free to contact me. Most likely, though, it's just practice. And yeah, I mean, that cheat sheet, go for it. Really, the whole goal is to try to get used to looking at it. And as you can tell, I mean, I've been now practicing this for a week, and I've already learned this once before, and I still make mistakes on some of the ECGs. So really, it's just practice, and yeah, I mean, take your time with it, and you'll get there. So thanks so much. If you did watch this all the way, and congrats, and you're going to be way more than ready for your final exam. The questions on this end part are going to definitely be harder than what you'd see, and you'll be ready if somebody asks you to read an ECG. All right, thank you.